So Project Veritas was back with another undercover expose. If you remember the name but you're not quite sure who they were the one to expose Google a little while ago for wanting to interfere in the 2020 elections.
Our definition of fairness is one of those things that we thought would be like obvious and everybody would agree to, and it wasn't. Like there are the same people who voted for the current president do not agree with our definition of fairness.
2020 is certainly on top of now my old organisation, Trust and Safety, is top of mind. They've been working on it since 2016 to make sure we're ready for 2020. So training our algorithms, like if 2016 happened again, would their outcome be?
But they have done many undercover investigative journalism stories. Unlike what the actual news is supposed to be doing, they actually do it. They do investigate, which we'll get into later because this video is actually about CNN and an undercover whistleblower that they got a hold of. And I gotta tell you that this video is pretty damn scary because they expose the fact that the president of CNN actually knew Trump and he has a personal vendetta against him, which is the reason why so many made up stories about him come out CNN. And it's crazy because Trump does a lot of fucked up shit. He says a lot of stupid shit. He just sent troops to what was it, Saudi Arabia or something like that after pulling them out of Syria. So he does stuff that you can bash him for, but they still have to make up stories because the president is so focused on his hatred towards this man. And all it does is brainwash the people that he works with and the people that watch his channel, which we'll get into here.
My name is Kerry Porch. I'm a satellite uplink technician. I'm a contractor at the CNN Washington, D.C. Bureau.
But Jeff Zucker, basically president of CNN, has a personal vendetta against Trump. It's not going to be positive for Trump. He hates him. He's going to be negative.
So we have people inside CNN that recognize that this dude has his own personal issues with President Trump and therefore will never cover him in a positive light. And it's something that we do see constantly from them. And we also see it from pretty much the whole party in general when it comes to the establishment Democrats. And it only hurts them because they lose moderates that lean left or even slightly right. And then they lose people that just Democrats that have a head on their shoulders that can think rationally. So they end up losing a lot of viewers, which is why they've been going down in ratings and why Fox has become a lot more moderate, because they saw a hole open up, just like how they saw there was a hole in the news for conservatives. So they started a station. Now they notice that a lot of moderates are losing where they can go for news because CNN has shifted so far to the left and just constantly lies and will not say anything positive, so they won't cover a full story. So Fox started picking up more people from the left and moderates, and now their ratings are up. And I do speak from experience as I am a leftist moderate myself, and I've seen many people leave CNN over these kind of reasons. Now, if you've watched moderates, you've probably heard them say more than once that the media created Trump. This whole environment wasn't because of Trump. Trump is just a symptom of what the media has made the culture. And even people inside CNN can recognize this.
I decided to wear a hidden camera.
Media created this monster. Created this monster. I'm reading him full play every single day. Media created the Trump.
They do a really good job of highlighting what the president of CNN's agenda is here. Every story, whether it's true or false, is for a pushment just to get Trump out of office.
We're moving towards impeachment. I mean, don't we shouldn't pretend, this is going one way, and so all these moves are moves towards impeachment.
When I came to work at CNN, I mean, it was my dream job, and that dream actually just turned into a nightmare.
So I just want to say on the Lindsey Graham front, I know that there's a lot of people at CNN that are friendly with Lindsey Graham. Time to knock that off, and it's time to call him out.
But what's more terrifying is how the CNN president talks about places like Fox. And it's hard to tell if he said this so much that he even believes it or if he just keeps this act up for his staff.
I think what's going on in America now is really fundamentally the result of years of fake news, conspiracy, nonsense from Fox News.
Now, this is after 3 years of a conspiracy theory that Trump got elected because of the Russians, which turned out to be false, and they kept pushing and pushing even after they said it was false, and Comey had to come out and say there was no collusion on CNN for them to finally drop this. And now they're whipping up another conspiracy theory about Trump and Ukraine, even though the transcript came out proving that there was nothing, and their whistleblowers admitted they had no firsthand knowledge, which means they're not whistleblowers. They're a person who heard another person say something. They're a gossiper. So it's crazy that he calls Fox News a conspiracy channel when all they do is pump out conspiracies, and they have pumped out many stories that were not true. They even said, instead of apologizing for lying to everybody about Russiagate for 3 years, he said, "We are not investigators. We are journalists, and our role is to report the facts as we know them," which is exactly what we did. And that's a complete lie. They didn't report facts. They reported a bunch of hearsay, and they're still doing that with the Ukraine story. And they reported a bunch of information that was outright falsified, along with the document that got the whole thing started. The dossier was proven to be false, but they don't report facts because they didn't report the fact that it turns out the Clintons were working with the Russians to make the dossier. They haven't reported on the fact that the Democrats worked with the Ukraine. They haven't reported the fact that Joe Biden admitted to getting the prosecutor in the Ukraine fired by withholding money.
Last year, in an interview, Joe bragged about getting Ukraine's general prosecutor fired. He says he was standing up to corruption.
I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, "I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, "You're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here." And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Oh, son of a got fired.
Which is funny because they actually denied Trump's ad on their channel that proves that he admitted to it, because Joe Biden did admit to it on video, but CNN still lies about it. And then their brainwashed followers actually cheered this on because they would rather have this false image that was made protected than learn the truth. So again, I don't know if he brainwashed himself into believing that Fox just pumps out conspiracies, even though they got caught pumping out lies and conspiracies, or if he keeps this up for his staff to create an environment where he makes them believe this, just like he does with his viewers. But either way, it's disingenuous, and it's really fucked up that he does something like that. Now, Fox is biased. Every news outlet, for the most part, will be biased. It's hard to find ones that are 100% neutral. But Fox hasn't been caught fabricating stories. They have gotten things wrong, and they do print retractions. They don't just go on Twitter and go, "Oh, I got this wrong," like CNN and MSNBC has done. Yes, they're biased. Every outlet's biased, but at least they're straightforward with it. CNN tries to say that they're down the road, middle of all of it. No, they are extremely left, even donating to Hillary Clinton, and obviously not to Trump because the president hates him.
He was calling Fox News fake news and a propaganda machine, and with what I saw, I'm like, that's pretty much what CNN was. Like, it's just pumping out propaganda.
The fake conspiracy nonsense that Fox has spread for years is now deeply embedded in American society, and frankly, that is destructive to America. And I do not think we should be scared to say so.
Now, this is something that I really wanted to push back on. Growing up as a Democrat, nobody was, always going to Fox. People didn't believe Fox, and that's what got bedded into society, and that's why a lot of people dismiss Fox now and has this prejudice towards them, even though they don't actually watch them, and assumes that they're lying. They don't always get everything right. Yes, they're biased, but a lot of times they tell the truth a lot more than what the other channels do, what CNN and MSNBC do. But growing up as a Democrat, I had to push back on that because that is just completely outrageous. It's embedded into society that you shouldn't watch Fox. And the fact that their ratings are so much higher than the other two just shows the fact that people started questioning what they thought. And that's what I did. I started questioning why I thought these things, and that's how I became aware how the media consistently lies. I don't really watch Fox. That might be a little bit of a remainder from, when I was programmed to think Fox was always the wrong outlet growing up as a Democrat. But it's the reason why I hate CNN, because I can see them lie constantly, and I see my friends believe them, and I know if I push back at all, they're going to assume that I support Trump or that I'm a Republican, both things that aren't really true. There's a great video called "Stop Making Me Defend Donald Trump" or something like that. It's that kind of thing where you push back against the lies and people start to assume about you, and then they just assume that you're lying because you're on this side, not that you're telling them the objective truth. And that's what CNN and MSNBC has done to people. It's the same reason why we had such a stigma against Fox for the longest time. Now, I'm not going to say that Fox's stigma wasn't earned. I don't exactly know. It was before my time. But I know now they shouldn't be carrying that stigma. And just to clarify, when I say that I had this stigma for Fox and everything that was programmed in, it wasn't programmed in by my mother. It wasn't programmed in by my grandparents. None of that. It was programmed in by society.
That there was a strong groupthink that permeated through the halls, and that everyone was on board the, I hate Trump train, or I want to, basically go after anyone, on the center or on the right politically.
Now, this is something that we've seen a lot. We saw how CNN attacked the Covington kids. We see how they constantly attack Republicans and Fox News. And they'll get into it later, but the craziest thing is that they're so programmed into this that these kind of places, CNN and MSNBC, will call actual news Russian propaganda if it goes against what they believe, no matter what the reality is.
On the calls to executive producers and news staffers across the country, it is clear that Zucker wants his network to stay focused on impeachment and nothing else.
Guns will be the central topic in the 2020 Democratic nomination race today. The Giffords PAC has paired up with MSNBC. They've got a gun town hall in Las Vegas. 10 candidates will be showing up there throughout the day. I don't care about the MSNBC event, okay? I don't care about them. Let's just stay very focused on impeachment.
Now, you got to be extremely obsessive over a person to ignore everything else, ignore what one of your competitions is doing, and ignore what you're for, They're ignoring a debate on gun control, which, gun control is a very left-leaning topic, along with many other things that they completely ignore because he's so fixated on Trump, and that is the sign of a very, very unhealthy and unhinged person.
The impeachment stuff, there's new developments every day, more shoes drop, and it's like, there's just nothing we can do. If Zucker wants impeachment every single day to be the top story.
That's what he wants.
Yeah, he wants impeachment. So
Above all else, honestly.
Above all else.
Now, not everybody at CNN falls for this, and not everybody is on board with all the anti-Trump, whether they want him gone or not, whether they support him or not. Some of them are just tired of it.
To a certain extent, you have to follow his verdict.
Yeah, you got to go with the downhill, so you got to go with the boss there.
Yeah.
And he's not, he's big.
He's like had an ongoing feud with Trump. It's no surprise.
Yeah.
He's had an ongoing feud with Trump since The Apprentice.
In 2004, Jeff Zucker was one of the executive producers at NBC Entertainment that greenlighted and produced The Apprentice, a show that turned Donald Trump from real estate tycoon to a mega star. Many say the show's and Trump's success helped Zucker rise to the top at NBC. And then, according to Neville and others, Zucker, as the president of CNN, helped Trump become the mega candidate.
He's known Trump for a long time. Like, they worked together back during The Apprentice.
And hates his guts.
I hate how everything is like all Trump all the time now. Everyone at the network complains about it. They hate covering Trump every day.
But they also expose some of the ways that they are a lot lighter on Democrats. Now, we've seen stuff about Democrats knowing what they're going to be asked beforehand, and we've seen, how CNN didn't disclose people working with the DNC when it came to Bernie in the last election. But they kind of talk about a little bit more of another way that they go lighter on them.
And I can understand if you're tough, maybe you're a little tough on the Democrats. It's okay, fine, whatever. Like, MSNBC is tougher on Republicans, and we're tough on Republicans too. More so than the Democrats. Our Democrat interviews are like softballs compared to Republicans. But I can understand.
You guys do a lot of Republican interviews, actually, though.
We do,
right? So which is good.
We do, but if you notice, every time we ask questions to Republicans, it's always a little tougher than when we do to the Democrats.
Now, this was only the first part. There's at least two, maybe more. It looks like next time they might be going harder on the CNN president. Now, I cut out a lot from this. The regular video will be linked in the description along with the website for Project Veritas, because a lot of times YouTube takes this down really quick. Even the Pinterest one, when they exposed Pinterest's bias, for some reason YouTube took that down really fast as well. But there were some points that I wanted to make on why I don't trust CNN and why you shouldn't either. But obviously their anti-Trump agenda goes so much further, even writing a review about the Joker that mentions Trump 12 times, something that had nothing to do with the Joker even a little bit. They spend absolutely anything that they can to make it negative. Like this headline, you'll never believe what Trump said about 9/11. He says that I was on the ground there too. I don't consider myself a first responder, which he wasn't. And this is something that he actually said, but they try and make it out like he's comparing himself to them and he's lying. He was there. He was there after the planes went down. He was getting people to go out there and help, and also, you know, surveying for rebuilding and everything. So this is something that was completely true. And they still try to spin it into a negative story about Trump. So no matter what he does, even if it's good, they're going to write a negative coverage of it. And that's how you know that they're biased and can't be trusted. Now, I like somebody like Tim Pool. Tim Pool does not like Trump. But he can say when Trump does good. He can say when Trump does bad. If you have somebody that you like, and they can admit when somebody or something that they like does good and does bad, then they're probably worth watching. But if they can never say anything positive, then there's probably something wrong and they're pushing some kind of agenda. They're probably not going to be telling you what the truth is. But it's not just the Trump stuff. That's the major stuff, because that's the major stuff they push, as the president shows you, which is kind of really hard to do, because whenever you want to bring up how CNN lies, you always have to basically, you know, protect the president, which a lot of people really don't want to do. But since that's all they talk about, that's all you can talk about to, you know, kind of prove that they're lying. But I also showed you this tweet earlier where the president said that they're not investigators, they're journalists, they report the facts. Well, one, they didn't report the facts. Many times when facts come out, they completely change the narrative, like the Dayton shooter here in Ohio. As soon as they found out that he was a leftist, they completely dropped the news story. They couldn't run with that. Not to mention, they did report a lot of things that were completely false, even falsifying who their anonymous sources were. But the biggest problem is the fact that they think journalists aren't investigators. It's called investigative journalism for a reason. Journalists are supposed to investigate and find out the truth. There's a lot of rules around being a journalist, and some of them most people will know as the ethics of journalism. But there's other rules, like you're supposed to find 3 stories to back up anything that you're going to run with. So, for example, the OK symbol being a white supremacist thing, they need 3 people to back up that story to make it true. They had the ADL, that was it. So you can't say that story is true. But they're supposed to find 3 basically like witnesses or 3 people who can corroborate a story, but they don't do that. But they're supposed to dive into things and try and find out what's true, and they don't have fact checkers, or else they wouldn't publish nearly as many lies as they do. They might have fact checkers, but they sideline them when it comes to Trump stories. I don't know. They're caught lying about a lot of other stuff. It's just Trump is the main thing, because it's the main thing that the CNN president pushes for. But there is a huge problem when our journalists think that they're not supposed to investigate a story to find out if it's true or not. It's really terrifying. Another reason why I don't like them is what they choose to cover. They covered the Russian scandal and they're covering the Ukraine scandal, both based on lies, but they don't cover the actual interference that happened. Because there was interference during 2016, and the main problem, Biden was vice president, Obama was president, and Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, I believe it was. So if the Russians were working for the Republicans, then why did all this happen during a total Democrat control? And that should tell you something, especially when you find out that turns out Hillary and Obama was selling, I believe it was plutonium to the Russians. And then we find out that it was either the Clinton Foundation or it was Hillary Clinton, I can't remember which, ended up working with the Russians to get the dossier. Then we find out that it seems like the Democrats were working with the Ukraine, and they don't cover those stories. They push the Russian and the Ukraine thing, saying that it's so bad, but as soon as the Democrats do it, they drop it. They won't even touch the damn thing. But because of CNN and MSNBC, especially over the last election cycle, most people don't trust the news anymore. Some of the craziest things I see come out of them is news that they covered, and then they turn around and spin it and lie. I mean, many people know this whole story about Trump calling immigrants animals. CNN covered this, and they continue to spout this lie, even though they had video footage of the truth. And it's the craziest thing because we see this all the time. We saw this when he said there's good people on both sides, and they spin that like he's talking about, you know, white supremacists being good, but he specifically says not the white supremacists and neo-Nazis, and they'll get footage of this stuff and then they'll turn around and lie to their audience about what happened, just like they did here.
Destroy the vile criminal cartel MS-13 and many other gangs. But MS-13 is particularly violent. They don't like shooting people because it's too quick. It's too fast. I was reading one of these animals was caught.
Steven Crowder did a video about Trump on a Change My Mind segment, and it shows how people are indoctrinated by lies that CNN and MSNBC will constantly shove in their head to the point that you cannot tell them the truth, and they will constantly deny it. I see this all the time. People will even link stories or they'll link videos, and people will absolutely refuse to click it, even if it's the person themselves admitting to it, like the stuff with Joe Biden.
You know, if you benefit from the KKK, you are a racist. You are a racist.
What if you condemn the KKK?
He never has, he never will.
Our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. Racism is evil, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
Sure he did.
Not out loud.
Sure he did.
Well, maybe it's
Many times. Many times. By name.
And these crazy people are created by them just pushing the most craziest stuff. Like they claimed on air that Trump killed more people than Hitler and Stalin, and they didn't push back against the guest that said this.
Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century. He may be responsible for many more million deaths than they were.
There are a bunch of lying fearmongers who don't care about the damage that they do. A woman stabbed herself because she was so scared of Trump, because she tunes into CNN and watches all this constant lies that they say. So we actually just watched the president of CNN call real news fake news and conspiracies while constantly pushing conspiracies. And it's the craziest thing ever. I don't know if he really believes this stuff or if he's just trying to, you know, get the people that work for him to believe this. And it's not just them, it spreads. We have people on MSNBC calling a political report Russian propaganda because it called out the lies and just goes against what she thought was true. So they're brainwashing the people that work for them, who are brainwashing the people that watch them, and it's the craziest thing.
He talked about investigating Ukrainian meddling in the 2016 election, which has been documented that they meddled in the 2016 election. A DNC operative met in the Ukrainian
propaganda,
embassy.
Mark. That's Russian propaganda.
It's actually in Politico, as reported by Ken Vogel, who works for the New York Times
Mark
now.
Lauder, I want to.
It's because of stuff like this that they're having massive layoffs at their companies all around the world. Just at the London one, they were losing $10 million a year, according to the president. So imagine what these other companies are doing. The regular CNN staff, the American one, had massive layoffs not too long ago. So I just want to wrap this up by saying the media is biased. Don't blindly trust them. Fact check them. I see so many people just believe in the media anymore. And that goes for your favorite YouTubers. Like, I like Tim Pool, but I'm not going to blindly trust everything he says. He does have a lot of credibility to me personally from what I've seen of him. I've seen a lot of his stuff be true. I've seen him issue corrections whenever he had to correct a story. And I'm going to link to his video because by the time I'm done with this, it'll be out. And he'll probably go a different direction because this is a career for him. I'm just an average person. So he'll probably go a lot more in depth and break things down better than what I could.